Yo, 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 welcome to another edition of the Geeky Bros podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
I'm your boy Darcy. I wasn't paying attention for a second there.
And this is Big Geek Umar. How you all doing?
Cool. All right, well, I don't think they can really reply right now, but
I was also talking about you guys, but like it's cool.
I'm doing good. I'm doing real good.
I thought that was for the audience too, and I was just like, when are they going to say anything?
In the comments section.
Oh, smooth.
True. They get ahead. I like that. All right, bro. So what's on the agenda for today?
I figured we would go something a little bit simpler than what we have. Instead of multiple points, we just have one big point that would have multiple discussions. So I have a question for both. Actually, I have two questions. One main question with a follow-up. So what are your favorite top 5 MCU films and why?
It's a good one. Umar, how about you kick us off?
I love how Tactix was just doing this. When I asked the question, he's like, I didn't hear nothing. What's going on?
Nothing, yo.
All right. So I'll basically what I'll do is I'll run down my top 5, and then I'll explain, and I'll go back and explain like the big reasons why there are in the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 spots. So hands down, number 1 has to go to Avengers Endgame. Probably is a very common answer, but nonetheless, that's where I'm at. Number 2 for me is and this is like a close second, is Captain America: Winter Soldier. And then number 3 is gonna have to go with Captain America: Civil War. And then after that, gonna have to go with the first Avengers movie.
Oh, okay.
And then my final one is Infinity War.
Okay. Oh, you got to go into why. I'm like listening to this list, and I'm like, and I'm also like looking at my list on the side, and I'm just like, I don't think I can give a 5. So I need you to like continue.
Okay. All right. So number 1, Endgame for me, like you have to understand, like when I first watched this in theaters, this was a cinema experience. Like
Umar, I don't have to understand nothing. You still hate Korra, so I don't have to understand nothing. Just go on.
I feel like I've like put you in like a PTSD situation. You're like, you're gonna talk about Korra. You're gonna talk about Korra.
For those who don't know, go watch the other videos. You'll find out why we have a problem about Korra.
That was what, like our first video or our second video?
Like second or third.
So yeah, Endgame for me was a cinema experience. It was possibly the greatest cinema experience of my life, and I don't mean to say that like the film was the greatest film of my life. I mean, going to see the movie in theaters was the greatest theater cinema experience I could ever hope for. It was 10 years of build-up, punctuated with like a great like penultimate movie in Infinity War, and then having boom, it just exploded in awesomeness.
Was that word penultimate?
Yes, that's basically something just before the ultimate.
Wow, I did not know that word existed. I just got educated. I like it. Keep going. I had to check that word. I was like, whoa, what is this?
So yeah, like it was written well. For me, the time, like a lot of people had some issues with the time travel. I didn't have as much with it. I guess once you start getting like too far into it and then you start arguing it too far, yeah, you could probably find some plot holes. But for me, I loved it beginning to end. I love that they took their time. I love that, like, I know some people felt that it was too slow. I felt it was perfect. Like, it was well paced, and that ending fight sequence, like that alone, just like, I mean, So yeah, like that is number one for me. Up until Endgame came out, Winter Soldier was my number one for like basically since the movie came out, and nothing ever was able to like top it. Winter Soldier had everything I was looking for. It gave me so Tactix, you could probably appreciate this. Superman that I had in 1978 with Christopher Reeve, like he is what I believe Superman should be. And I mostly got that in the Superman animated series, but then I got like glimpses of him. I think at best at Justice League. I know he did our man dirty in that movie, but it did slightly redeem Superman in that movie. So for me, there's like this ultimate Boy Scout who's like there for everybody, and Chris Evans, Captain America in Winter Soldier was what's. Sorry, Darcy, I know this is probably going to hurt your feelings a little bit. He's everything that Henry Cavill wasn't when Man of Steel came out.
Yo, Henry Cavill is the G, okay? It's not his fault how they write some of the stuff, okay? You know, they did Batman wrong, okay? And it has nothing to do with Ben Affleck, okay? I'm just saying.
No, but like what I'm saying is like Henry Cavill proved, like I always believed he had it in him. He is the guy who can do it. But you're right, the writing wasn't there. They kind of somewhat possibly gave some of that writing at the end of Justice League when he came back. Anyway, spoiler warning. Too late now, but still, spoiler warning.
They ain't gonna go see it at this point.
But with Captain America Winter Soldier, I got like Steve Rogers was the 21st century of what Christopher Reeve was when in the 1970s or like early 1980s. I got that for the first time since him, and freaking Chris Evans did it, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I never thought I never thought I would care about Captain America. I was like, "This guy, whatever." I liked him in I liked how Chris Evans did him in the first movie, but Winter Soldier is just like, and also it was basically like Jason Bourne meets the MCU, and I was like, "This is my jam." And also that highway fight scene with the Winter Soldier is still. Well, up until Infinity War and Endgame came, it was still the best like fight sequence for me in Marvel.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying not to get too bogged down for time, but so number 3 is Civil War. It was slightly more campy than I would have liked. Kind of like it felt for me that if they had a really good storyline that was going to go like soar, it did. But it felt like the studio had a little bit of say in it. So that's why I kind of like dropped to number 3, because like that whole, like don't get me wrong, I enjoyed that airport fight scene, but that felt like it was like studio influenced. It wasn't like, it didn't really fit with the rest of the film in terms of like how serious they were taking it.
Yeah.
So like, but nonetheless, that like the introduction of Spider-Man, the introduction of Black Panther, the excellent use of both of them, and then on top of which that phenomenal finale that was filled with both emotion and also action. Civil War was it was what Avengers Ultron never could hope to be.
Yeah.
And then moving on to the first Avengers movie as my number 4, because that I remember going to see that movie for the first time. I remember the excitement I had, and not only was it reaching it, but like surpassing it, but also just I went back and watched it last year just to be like, hey, does this hold up? And for me, it does. It is a solid film that has like action, humor, like nuances and subtleties of performances, and like callbacks to like the previous films, and just it was the first time we got different movies coming together to form one big movie. Like it was the first time, and we never believed that could happen, and it did, and it was successful. So yeah, that always holds like a special place in my heart for me. Plus also I'm a big Loki fan, like Tom Hiddleston all the way, so like having him as the main villain, that's just gold. And then finally Infinity War, because like I know it was like I felt it was slightly rushed, and so were the big time critics, but actually it's kind of interesting. It was, critics said that it was rushed, but Endgame's people said it was too slow. So like ultimately they kind of balance each other out. But Infinity War was just fucking awesome. That's all I can really say. It was just fucking awesome.
Wow, we get some emotion over here. Tell them how you feel, man. Tell them how you feel.
These are all the movies that make me happy. Like basically all 5 of these movies I can watch at any point. I will love the shit out of each one, and it makes me feel like a kid every single time.
Dope.
Yeah.
I love that list. You know, you had me over here the whole time, just like looking at my list. I even massaged my list a little bit since while you were talking. I'm like, not actually so much because like I'm copying the list, because I actually didn't. There's some definite similarities between our lists, but because like you were kind of reminding me of certain things, and I was like, you know what? But like, and then different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in on mine quick then. So my list goes Endgame, Winter Soldier.
Nice. Say it, man. Say it.
Oh, I'm debating between these two. I'm like, should I flip these two? I have 3 now, and I'm like, they're all like in 3rd place for me, and I'm like, I'm struggling. I don't know which to say. So we got Endgame, we got Winter Soldier. Yep. Okay, we got Endgame, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, Black Panther, Guardians 1.
Damn. Okay, that's actually okay.
And that's not even how the list is written. I just went off gut and switched them in my as I said it. Okay, so Endgame, because everything you said, the build up, the payoff, like just the epicness of everything, and you know, finally getting to see and you. Let me put this to you as a random example, okay? You see a movie like X-Men Apocalypse being advertised, right? And and imagine you're like a young kid, right? And we felt this when we heard about X-Men 1 coming, right? You get this feeling of like, oh, I can imagine this big epic spectacle. And in the shows they drew it like this, but like, oh, what if they had like all these people and all these things happen? And then every time you get the films, just like X-Men Apocalypse, you get nothing. You get like so little. Right? Up your imagination. And Endgame is the one film to actually take everything that a kid imagines of like all the cool stuff that could happen in a film with like superheroes. And then it's like, no, it's actually happening. And it's still happening. And it's like they really spent money on this, and we all appreciate it, and it financially worked out.
And also, sorry to interrupt, just going to your point, like about like the advertising and like the trailers for stuff. For Endgame, all the trailers only showed the first like 20 to 25 minutes of the film.
It's Russo Brothers. Russo Brothers is awesome for like underselling, because the thing is you have to undersell. I mean, they didn't have to sell it. They could literally have gotten away with Endgame. And that was the advertisement. We were like, yeah, we're showing up. Like, I don't think the box office would have changed at all if they didn't advertise and they just said the name of the movie, because people had to see it after the last film. They had to see how it finished. And then once people heard about how good it was, it would have gone. So, like, they could have advertised, like, back in the 1920s or whatever, when film started, like, when they would just have the name and you'd be like, okay, I'll go check it out. So, right? So Endgame, number 1. Like you said, Winter Soldier was like my top for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's also my favorite Captain America uniform of all of them. There was something about it. It was because it was so real. Like that looked like a stealthy actual uniform.
A Black Ops Captain America.
Yeah. They just happened to put a star on it, right? Like they wouldn't give that to everybody else, right? And I love like how he like jumps out of the plane in the beginning and like goes into that boat, and that whole fight sequence and every fight sequence. But I just love how like everyone's like, did he have a parachute? It's like the plane, right? And how grounded it was, how just the action was top notch. Okay. Then Infinity War, and because it is the first film to truly like pay a consequence in a film that had not happened like that in a superhero film. Like the whole Peter Parker and Tony Stark scene.
Yeah.
When he goes, I'm balling, and it was like really like they actually went there, and then the film ends, and they're like, okay, some after credits. They're going to do something like no, like, and then they left you with that for a year. Like that experience alone, like just amazing. Now, Black Panther for everything, and I kind of want to debate between it's like Black Panther and Civil War. For me, a lot of things were really dope in Civil War, but Black Panther just did more of it, which was expanding of the universe and a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of like I feel bad leaving Civil War off of my list because I love that chase scene with the cars, especially learning how the stuff people did it. Like, because the thing not a lot of people realize that they were actually running on that highway.
Yeah.
What they used for the people who don't know, they have this kind of thing called magic carpet, and they put it behind the vehicles, and the vehicles were going at like 50 miles per hour, and the people were running on them. So if they fell off, they were like going to be seriously injured. They were actually doing, that's why it looks so good. So much of that was practical. But for me, I don't know, Black Panther, it's just, there's a lot of representation reasons. There's a lot of like expansion of the universe. Just a lot of cool, awesome stuff in there. And Guardians won because Guardians is like the thing that started the change in Marvel to a degree in terms of like coloring, like started to become way more vibrant after that point and more distinct. Each film, I feel like, started to get a little bit more of its color palette instead of being generically, because a lot before that, they were kind of boring visually, like they were very like color muted in comparison. It was noticeable when you saw Guardians of the Galaxy. There's something about it, and it was an awesome experience that like every time that thing is on, like I can always slide in and watch that because it's going to be awesome, right? It's not as epic as some of the other films, but it's so something different that I don't know. I feel like up to that point there was some good, and then there was some not so good in Marvel, and they were being a little safer. And that movie came in, and it was like, no, let's be a little more adventurous with all of our stuff. Let's not hold back. It's kind of what it felt like to me. Like that movie meant something.
They literally, like, Marvel literally took like the bottom of the barrel, like C, D level characters, and was like, yo, let's put them front and center, and they kicked ass.
Yeah.
Also, that soundtrack was just magnificent.
Yeah, and an honorable mention to Guardians of the Galaxy 2, just for the ending like scenes with the what's his name, the guy with the mohawk when he passed, and the feels that they were able to paint in that. That's why I call honorable mentions for that part of the film, because that was so well done. But a lot of the rest of the film was all right, you know. That whole part was like, because he's like the whole time he was like, but like, I kind of like was your father, right? And
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh, all right. I digress. Tactic.
All right, T, you're up.
Okay, so number one would probably be Endgame for me, solely based off of the fact that it was like, it felt more like it felt more than just a movie. It was an event. Like, it was like I was at an arena, I was watching a sporting event or a fighting event happen, and I was rooting for a specific team. And I just remember the moment when I'm in the theater, and like those callback moments, or those like moments that were like so powerful, like when Cap picks up the hammer, and you're just like so many good moments in that movie. Like
it was like our Super Bowl, like the Geek Super Bowl.
Yeah, or the moment when like Cap, or the moment when like it's just Thanos and Cap facing off against each other, and like Cap's shield is like broken, and Thanos is just looking at him like, yo, you got nothing now, and he's walking towards him, and then Cap does a whole callback to like, I can do this all day, and you see the will in his eyes, but like, you know, he's like, fuck, like this is it. This is the end for me. And then all of a sudden,
I thought he was gonna die in that scene. Like I was legit thinking he was gonna die.
And then at the end, during that scene, you just hear Cap on your left, and then all of a sudden you see the Doctor Strange, this little portal thing open, and then everyone's coming through, and then it's just that that standoff, and then we finally get the line, Avengers assemble, and you're just like, what? Like, in hindsight, like thinking back, I wish it would have been a little bit louder, but the fact that we still got it was amazing nonetheless, right? So Endgame for me, I just remember like being at the edge of my seat or like literally getting up and like cheering and like just hearing the audience reactions, like it just added to the whole event. And so close second would be Infinity War for me, just because I remember loving the film because I was like, oh man, we finally get Thanos. And then like that whole fight scene between him and Tony, and like when Tony gets like stabbed in the gut and you're like, oh shit, this is it. Like this is when because we all kind of assumed that he was going to kick the bucket, but we didn't know if it was going to be in Infinity War or in Endgame, and sadly it was in Endgame. But that moment when it happens, we're all like, oh, and you can hear the gasp in the theater, and you're just like, oh shit, like it happened, like this is it, this is the end. And so that moment, and then obviously the fucking epic snap, and you're just like, and I remember, I think I was watching it with you.
You were sitting next to me. I remember. Like,
I was like, I because you had already seen it, and so I turned to you and I was like, wait, what? And you were like, yeah. And I was like, wait, no, the movie's not done. It's like there's still more, right? And then credits. And I was like, what? And then I just remember going home and we were all silent, bro. Like we were all like, we were all quiet because we were like, yo, did that just happen? Because we had no like even if you're like, even if you know, because the snap happens in the comic book, right? So you kind of expect it, but even then it was so flooring. You're just like, like they just did that. They just went there.
I remember also like right after like the credits rolled, and you're like, okay, so there has to be an after credit scene, and I'm like, man, there's not. It's like, no, you're fucking with me. Shut the fuck up. I'm gonna see the after credit scene, and we get to the end. And you're like,
wait, well, there wasn't there? It was it set up Captain Marvel, right? When
no, that was oh, actually no, that was Spider-Man did the thing, because it was Ant-Man and Spider-Man both did after credits. Oh wait, hold on. No, sorry, it was Ant-Man and Captain Marvel. Those were the two that had the after credit scenes. But I don't recall.
I know Ant-Man's was
when everyone disappeared.
When he goes into the thing, but I could have swore Infinity War had a end credit scene too, where they set up Captain Marvel.
You're right.
Yeah,
because
it was the
because that's when we
Samuel
find out
Jackson, but I can't think of his name. Yeah, and Nick Fury with the Captain Marvel, and then
you're right.
Did they do the showing of the fan for Ant-Man?
He presses the pager, and like his last words were like "mother f," and then he just blitzed out right then.
Yeah. So I liked it for that element, because just to echo what Darcy said, it's very rare that you see that in a film where the bad guy gets the upper hand and he wins ultimately, and then you're just like, the audience is just left feeling like what the fuck? The only thing that has really come close to that to a certain extent, but not nearly on the same caliber, was the Matrix Reloaded at the end. I don't know if you remember the scene where Agent Smith finds a way into the real world because he takes over that guy's body, and then it's Neo on one end of the table, and then they pan over, and then it's Agent Smith, but in the body of a different guy, and you're just kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? So
for me, it was the Empire Strikes Back, because like that was like the one that always, like, even as a kid, like the fact that like evil won, like Darth Vader, like he like mopped the floor with everybody. I was like, yo, they can't just end it like that.
Yeah.
So like this was like the new Empire Strikes Back. It was Infinity War's down here.
Yeah. So number 3 for me would be Winter Soldier, because going into Captain America, the first Avenger, I remember not being impressed at all. I was just kind of like, it's
really,
I wasn't really into it.
I think I was the only one who actually was impressed with that movie.
I liked elements of it, but overall, like, it's not a movie that, like, I base my list on rewatchability. So if I can watch a movie over and over again, then that for me pretty much signifies whether or not I really like the movie, right? And so for Captain America, I think I only saw it 1 or 2 times, and I really wasn't all that interested in it. So, but when they came out with Winter Soldier, it was like completely different, and it's like everything about that, like the highway scene, like you guys mentioned, just the overall storyline, what do I compare it to? It's kind of like a espionage type of film. Like Marvel has this way of like, they play on the tropes of like movie genres in a way. Like with Ant-Man, it was like a heist film. With Winter Soldier, it was like an espionage type of conspiracy. It was like
a kind of spy film.
Yeah. So I really like that because it takes it beyond just a comic book movie, which is why it's like I can kind of get why a lot of these actors who are part of these franchises hear like people like Martin Scorsese like say, oh, like Marvel movies aren't real films or anything like that. But it's like the storyline is there. Like if you strip away like the superhero element to it, like, and you just get engulfed in the film itself and the way it's written and the storyline and the character development, like it's all there. Like all the pieces are there of a film. The only thing I would say that's lackluster that needs to be better developed, with the exception of Thanos, is the villains. Like a lot of Marvel's villains aren't that strong in terms of their character development, aside from Thanos and Loki, obviously. But
exactly, that is the list.
Yeah.
Whoa, Killmonger, man, he's a good villain.
Yeah, but then they kill him off, and it's just like,
I know. I'm just saying, like he was a really like methodical, fleshed out villain. Obviously, he's not there to work with.
I would say that Killmonger was the first relatable villain because like Loki, we can't really relate to him. He's more like a Shakespearean character that we can connect with. Thanos, well, we can get to him later. But like Killmonger, like to a point, I remember Tactix. I think it was you saying it. Like your favorite villain is the one that you understand.
You have a hard time like going against them. Like they make a lot of really good valid points that you're kind of like, oh, but I get it. Like Magneto is a perfect example where it's just like, okay, you're a bit of an extremist, but I get where you're coming from. So like your people have been oppressed and you want to do right by your people, and you don't give a fuck about all the other the human race because they don't give a fuck about you. And so your ideals kind of represent that extreme behavior that you're exhibiting, but it makes a whole lot of sense.
Especially in X-Men First Class, like when you see like how they paint the backstory and then they lead into who he is, you're like, great.
Another villain I think I really resonated with the same way as Killmonger was Koba from Planet of the Apes.
That he was also a really good villain. Great villain. Yeah.
When you said that at first, I was like, which Marvel film? Before you said Planet of the Apes, I'm like, what?
No, I went there too. I was like, wait, who's Koba? I was like,
I was thinking like maybe it's like in what was it? Ultron. I was thinking like Ultron.
So going back to like Winter Soldier for you, so like it was the fact that it was like a genre based thing.
Yeah, and then like. That movie is what made me like just fall in love with Captain America. Like I didn't know much about him. Like I knew, like I'd seen like the old like 80s or maybe it was a 70s version of Captain America. Like there was an actual movie that
you saw that old one.
I saw the old one and I was like, damn, this, like I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
So I just had that image in my mind, and then I'd seen like him show up here and there in like some of the Spider-Man. Yeah, but like again, it was at that point I was kind of like, I don't really care about Captain America. I'm here for Spider-Man, or I'm here for the Punisher. But Chris Evans did a phenomenal job with that character and just what Captain America stands for. Like Umar, what you were saying, how he's kind of like a similar representation of what Christopher Reeves brought to Superman's character, right? I really felt that, right? The parallels are very similar. And so, yeah, I just really liked him as a character and what he stood for. And on top of that opening scene, on the ship where he fights GSP. Like I was, man.
I
like
had
that.
no idea who that person was. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's him!" And I'm just like, "Yeah, who?"
Yeah." Like I'm not a big UFC fan. Like I don't watch it religiously, but I do respect GSP. GSP kind of reminds me of Captain America in a lot of ways, like based on some of his interviews in terms of like what he actually represents. Like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Conor McGregor. Like GSP is like the opposite of Conor McGregor. Not to say that Conor McGregor is bad by any means, but like he's got a certain level of, I don't want to say, it's like a very inflated ego. Like granted, he can back it up, right? He's very, very confident. Whereas GSP is more on the humble side. He actually doesn't like fighting, and it's just something that he does for his job. And like I was listening to him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about how like the process in terms of like when he's getting ready for a fight, he's petrified. Like he's like, I train like so hard, and I'm all like, every fight I've ever been in, I've always been afraid. People always think, oh, you have all this confidence, you're ready and everything. It's like, no matter how ready I am, I'm always afraid. But then I always just, try to kind of, change my mindset to like being like, okay, you know what? I have this, I got this. And that I just found that very admirable, because you would think like, cause he's like considered one of the greats in UFC. And then just for him to be so humble about his accomplishments and everything like that is very admirable to me. Like I said before in a previous podcast, like I don't like those like overly cocky characters, whether in real life or in like entertainment or like movies or whatever like that. Like I resonate more with the humble guy who is great and has every reason to be cocky, but is very tame. Like Captain America, perfect example. Like
like
fucking.
I would say like one of the things, I think the reason why I like the first Captain America so much was because I, like you, Tactix, I hated Captain America. I'm like, I don't need some like redneck guy with like there's like a American shield to like come out and say America is great. Yeah. Instead, I got Chris Evans, who used to be the funny man. Like he was like, I remember he was like a poor man's Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the first Captain America shows up, and he plays this like really soulful.
Yeah.
Like that's what made me love the movie. I was like, holy shit, this is actually. This is well acted. Yeah. And then I also like what you were talking about right here about the humbleness. It's like he goes through this transformation. He starts like making these movies and doing all these like stage fights and all that sort of stuff. He goes to see one of his own movies with the crowd. The crowd is like cheering, and he's like this big guy, just like crunching the counter, and he has like a small little smile. And I was like,
yeah. And he's actually mentioned how like he actually turned down the role a couple of times beforehand because of the lengthy commitment, and that he's a person that goes through like actual anxiety and bouts of depression, which I also found very admirable, because that's a very vulnerable thing. And I've always said that like when you're able to express your vulnerability openly, it's actually not weakness. It's the opposite. It's strength, right? So I really respected him for that, and it just kind of it really solidified Marvel's choice in him becoming Captain America, because it's like now it's like based off of who Captain America is. It's like I can't see him as anything other than what Chris Evans gave us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's really perfect in that role. And like going back to that like first Avengers piece, like the first movie, I love that movie. And the funny thing is I think that the lesser parts of the film are actually in the more super heroic parts, and the better parts of the film are in Chris Evans.
Completely agree.
Yeah. That's very well said. I agree with that. Yeah.
You keep going with your list. I just like when you said that, I was like, that's like where I feel. Like it's a great film, and I always remember Chris Evans scenes. Like even the scene with like I saw this actually with my woman's like younger nephew one day, and I don't think he'd seen the movie because it's like he was like 2 or something when it came out, and we were watching it, and the scene with the flagpole, and it was just kind of like for him it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, sometimes you just don't have to be like strong, you just have to be smart, and it was like dude, like the simplest thing ever, but nobody saw it.
Yeah.
And also, I love how she like laughed, like such a.
And he just got in the truck and he's just like, all right. Yeah.
he folds the flag and he's just like, here you go. And then he just like walks on. I was like, damn.
Oh man.
It was awesome because it's just like even he knew that they were dumb, but he's like, I'm too tired to deal with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Your number 4.
So number 4, it would have to be Civil War, just because it gave us so much. I felt like it was an Avengers film because of how jam-packed it was, but it didn't for me personally, it didn't feel rushed or jam-packed at all. Like it was very, very complete. There was a lot of really great elements in it, and I liked the tension that built as a result of the divide between the two teams.
The debate,
the debate, and it was kind of like, okay, it's like you're put in a position where it's like, all right, I see both points, but it's like, man, it's like for me, I was kind of like, yo, I'm Team Cap. I'm sorry, even though they got Spider-Man over on the other side
and Black Panther,
yeah. But I mean, he had his own kind of vendetta. I feel like he was just like.
But this is what I love. This is why Civil War is up on my list, is because the debate is multifaceted. It's not just like which side you're on. Because like for me politically, I go with oversight, which means I would have gone with Iron Man. But at the same time, like we're saying, I believe in Captain America. So like when he says the safest hands are still our own, I believe that. And also I'm like, no, so like it has to, I agree. I would be on Team Cap. But also at the same time, like T'Challa and like the death of T'Chaka, he is politically warranted. He's from royalty. He is a king. And also at the same time, they killed the king. So therefore, they're a lot like legally and also like in some form, like let's just leave it legally. Legally, he's entitled to everything he did. And I'm just like, but at the same time, you're like, oh, you're lost in anger. Yeah. So yeah, I hear you on that one.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was really powerful in that regard, and that's why I put it on my that's why it made the top 5 for me. And I love that hangar fight scene, man. Like I say what you will about it, but that was like the most entertaining 15-20 minutes for me within that movie. I was just like, man, I can't believe I'm like alive to witness this shit happening right now.
Yes.
Like.
Yeah,
and on top of that, it's the introduction of Spider-Man that they finally got right, like in the sense where it was like with Tobey Maguire,
Umar's debating over here, but go on.
Hear me out.
Actually, I want to hear this.
Hear me out. So with Tobey Maguire, we got a perfect Peter Parker, but he did not make a good Spider-Man. I'm just going to be frank with that.
I agree.
With the Amazing Spider-Man. Yo, he was killing it as Spider-Man, but he was way too fucking cool to be Peter Parker. No, there's no way you're gonna tell me that guy that version of Peter Parker is a nerd that can't get girls. This man's like skateboarding and shit, and like even before he had the powers, like he was too cool. Like Peter Parker's supposed to be like a nerd, and like I feel like if he took a couple martial arts class, he'd fuck Flash Thompson up in a heartbeat, man. Like that, like I didn't buy him as a nerd at all. And then with Tom Holland, he was very witty as Spider-Man, you could see like they actually introduced him in the sense of like him talking during fights, which is like a common trope for Spider-Man because it kind of helps him relax and focus or whatever. I mean, you probably know more of the reason than I do, but and then as Peter Parker, especially when he got his own movie, you could see, this dude actually is a nerd. Like I believe him. I believe what they're trying to build or convey with his character in the sense that, okay, yeah, this guy's kind of a geek. Like he probably doesn't pull a lot of girls. Look at his best friend. His best friend is also a nerd. It's like it's believable. You know what I mean?
I only thing I have to say that I agree with you. The only thing I think that Tom Holland is actually like almost too attractive to be a Peter Parker, if you know what I'm saying. Like he's like I believe it because he sells it, but if I look at it like in reality, I'd be like, yeah, he can still get girls.
Okay, fair, but I mean, even in the animated show, like from the 90s, like he was still an attractive dude. So it was like, but he was also like a nerd, right? So it was kind of
he was like self-defeating himself in the sense that he had the capability to do it. He just never believed he had the capability to do it.
That's why I like believed in Andrew Garfield as well. Like, because like I found that Andrew Garfield was like, I agree he was better as a Spider-Man. Like his joking and like his being like the literal friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But also, like, his Peter Parker I will agree, it's a little too tortured, a little bit too angry, but, like, he still also had that, like, that emo aspect of it being, like a guy who doesn't have a lot of friends. Yeah. But I do see that Tom Holland does the nerd cold.
Yeah, like, if we're basing it off of what we're used to with the character, then I feel like Andrew Garfield's version kind of goes against that. Not to say that he didn't do a great job, but I think he's a phenomenal actor, especially when, like, we had already mentioned the scene between him and Aunt May when she's like, "You're my boy," kind of thing. Like, that scene alone between the both of them, his performance as well, phenomenal. Just like the way that, like, his mannerisms and the way he reacted when he was like so endearing, like that to me is like, he's a great actor.
And him and Emma Stone, like they're
that was just organic. I mean, they were just pretty much living their lives, right? So it's like, But
I love Andrew Garfield's depiction, and I agree that like his Peter Parker is not as accurate, but I feel like it was accurate in a semi different universe kind of idea. Like if it wasn't like the true and tried and true universe, because I feel like it was not set up 100% to be the typical tried and true universe. Because if we take what Tom Holland's is, it's a tried and true universe because of everything else that's around it, and the more fun, I want to say, universe, that universe is meant to be a little bit different. I was really upset when like Andrew Garfield was going to be recast, and Tom Holland won me over right away, like, and then, like,
right away,
like a heartbeat. Like, it was like, oh, okay. But like, I was surprised. I was like, I thought I was gonna struggle, and then it was like, oh no, we're good. Like,
it's like when your buddy gets like dumped, and then like you have to meet like the new boyfriend. You're like, I'm not gonna like this guy, and then like the guy's like, hey man, how you doing? Like, okay, hey man, just like, how's it going?
Yeah. But like, I don't know. I also had time to mourn, but yeah, I agree that like, if you ask me, would I want Andrew Garfield's character in this universe? No.
I agree.
If we had a Spider-Verse and in live action stuff, I would love to see that, and it'd be explained as an alternate Spider-Verse, right? Like, that to me would work. But I digress. Anyways, you have like, pick number 5 to still get to, right?
So the last one is, and this one was tough for me because I had a lot of contenders, but I'd have to put my number 5 as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Damn.
There it is.
And I picked this one specifically because, Umar, we had already discussed this. I'm not a big fan of like space, like space movies, right? So it's like, they don't really do much for me. Like, the only space movie that I really got into was the original Star Wars franchise, right? And even then, it's like I wouldn't call myself like an avid fan of Star Wars. I'll like go and watch the movies, but I don't really pay much attention to the lore. Like, I personally liked the new films, but everyone was like shitting on them. So it's like, okay, well, I clearly have no idea what's going on because I actually enjoyed it, and apparently I'm missing something.
We'll have another discussion about Star Wars, but like I would say, like I didn't have.
Well, actually, no, because I don't know much about Star Wars. I wasn't trying to say that to like bring that into the podcast.
Tactix, let me give you the piece of the conversation to help, because I'm also not heavy into Star Wars, but I've watched all the Clone Wars, like all of the like the animated stuff through and through, and watched a bunch of YouTube videos like to understand more of the lore, but I'm like still super ignorant. The thing that I find about the last 3 films, one, they don't stand up. Like, when you watch them in time, they just don't stand up. Like, they have so many giant flaws in their like even their plots that just don't make sense. And then when you tie it back to everything else that goes before it, it really hurts, right? Because it doesn't act properly.
Honestly,
I guess I'm just simple-minded, man. I don't know. I was
bro, it's not like that. Like literally, they're called the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy is at war with itself. Like because of behind the scenes, like the writers, directors, and like the studios were all going at each other. And like the first one, it was like a rehash of like the original. So everyone was like, okay. But like when we went to our sequel trilogy, we had just seen the prequels. Like we all know how terrible those movies were. Do you know how terrible those movies were?
I only saw the first one.
Then you know how terrible that they were.
You have enough.
I saw bits and pieces of like 2 and 3. I saw what I needed to see.
That's all you need to do, man.
And then going into like the newer ones, I watched, like I found like a full summary of the movies leading up to the newer ones. So I just watched that to kind of get a general understanding of the lore. And like you, Darcy, I was still kind of ignorant to what was going on.
I feel like there's also a thing that can play, especially when you are completely ignorant of the lore and don't care, and that's fine. Like lots of people are. I feel like the prequels and even the sequels, I don't know what to call them, they both have a lot of really cool moments. But as an overall arcing story and tying everything in, it just doesn't hold up. There's just issues at play.
Like literally, the only thing you can say positive about the prequels is the fact that it was a cohesive storyline. It wasn't good, and it wasn't in line with the originals that was done. But at least that trilogy in itself, it made sense. Like the arc was there. The sequels, the arc kind of went like this.
That's fair.
You're like, I guess, but like I myself, like I didn't hate the sequels as much as the rest of the Star Wars fandom did. But that's like, that's a whole other debate. But yeah, so you're saying that.
So back to the Guardians. With the Guardians, like I said, I'm not really big into space movies and whatnot. It's never really been my shit. But watching the movie, I kind of went in with like low expectations because for one, it was a space movie. 2, I had no idea who these fucking characters were. So it's kind of like I was just kind of going in. I'm like, I'm just watching it just so I can be caught up with the timeline and understand what we're leading up to, right? So I don't want to miss out on anything. And I walked away really enjoying it. I had a really great time, especially like the opening scene, I guess. There was a scene before that, but like the whole dance with Star-Lord, I was like, yo, I am in. So I was just like, it's basically setting a precedent for like the rest of the movie. So I'm like, all right, cool. And then, the storyline, like I was cool with the storyline. It's nothing epic or anything like that. It's not on like the level of like Winter Soldier, but the characters are really what sold me for that within that movie, right? Like all the characters had something interesting and intriguing to bring to the table. Like even Groot, it was just kind of like just him and like
Vin Diesel killed it.
Yeah, it was just like one note character, right? But it was cool. Like it was cool to see him, and like he added a comedic element to the movie as well, and like him in pairing with
Dave
Rocket.
Bautista.
Absolutely. Like everyone had their funny moments, really. So just the characters are really what did it for me, and so I walked away really enjoying the movie, and I would watch it again.
Okay, so both of yours descriptions have led me to ask you 2 additional questions.
And I have 3 points to make after that.
Okay, so what is the most funniest moment in the MCU that like you just remember right off the bat that also makes you chuckle when you remember it?
Oh, I don't know right now.
Okay, it's because it's the most recent and it's the one I think of. Captain America when he's fighting himself. And he goes, I could do this all day. And he's like, I know.
That's good.
Because it was a trope that they kept saying over and over again. And then finally it was like, even he's getting bored of it, man. So I really like that one. That one really stood out for me. And then on top of that follow-up where he's just like, that is America's ass.
That's funny. One that stands out for me comes from Black Panther when what's his name he's healed and he wakes up and he walks up and she's like don't scare me like that colonizer. I was like, oh.
I remember that the entire audience was laughing so hard I did not hear the next two lines at all.
Oh man, I was like, colonizer, that is going to be my word. I want to insert that on people in a really unexpected way because it is like a kind of offensive phrase that at the same time they're not ready for because they never heard it. So you're like, what? Yeah. You?
For me, I think it would have to be it would have to be Dave. Like, I think the one that I laughed the hardest at, and it was also the thing I heard the recent was also Endgame, was I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
Wrong game.
That killed me. Almost, but I gotta say, like the closer, like Dave Bautista, because I never expect him to be funny. He always gets me to laugh the hardest, and I think it would be like this. Like the other one, he said it was like nothing. Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast.
Catch it.
I was like,
yeah, he's good. Oh man, do you have a second follow-up question?
Oh yeah, the follow-up question was: did you guys ever? Because like I remember there were two big debates in Marvel. One was Civil War, which is like we kind of touched upon it earlier, which is like which side are you on? Why? I even remember like my sister and I, who like were big politics people, and we like started like arguing both sides. But anyway, like my question to you is: did you guys ever get involved in the Thanos debate? Like, did you ever like side with Thanos or like think that he had a point in Infinity War?
Yes, I did. I think I got into a debate with you about it.
Really?
A little, or maybe it wasn't you, it was someone else. But I just was like, initially, I was like, all right, I guess I can see where you're coming from. But then I'm like, you got this glove that has like the power of the universe. Rather than wiping out the entire planet, can't you just make more resources? Like, it just didn't make. I felt like he was just like, yo, I just want to be an evil dick because I'm Thanos and I'm a badass.
I think it goes to, and I'm going to bring up a comparison to Magneto here, which is. He had a past, right? And that past trauma that led him to cement himself in a belief that this is how we're going to solve this problem. And he was steadfast enough to actually do something about it. And at some point, you know, like in the beginning, there's always a point where you might, change your mind. But if you commit to it, like actually wipe out a planet or kill people for your belief, you're going to cement even deeper into it. And so I think that it goes more to the point that by the time he gets the gauntlet, there's no way he's going to change his mind. It's not like he's going to take more resources. And it's not like he was trying to convince him to change his mind. Like nobody was making the argument, hey, by the way, why don't you try this? It's just, it's one of those things where it's like he had cemented his mind in it and he didn't have a different conclusion early on because of some trauma. And that was the point to like, different thing.
Totally, but for me it didn't translate as strongly in terms of like my belief or like my own perspective in terms of like, oh, I can see and justify it in my head as to why that's the logical route for you to take versus someone like Magneto where it's like, it's another extreme, but it's like, shit, I do kind of get where you're coming from. So now I'm conflicted. I wasn't conflicted with Thanos's ideals.
There are people who get to that conclusion. Actually, surprisingly, like a surprising good number of people who get to those kinds of conclusions where eradication or types of things are their answer. But it is a obviously a lesser a number of people. So
for me, like what I found, like I know some people who've like strongly argued that like Thanos was going about things right, and like it's just that he was just going a little too over the top by like wiping out half their existence. And also other people were arguing like, why can't, like the same thing as you Tactix, like why can't you just make more resources? But for me, like I'm kind of in line a little bit, mostly in line with what you're saying, Darcy, where like he suffered a trauma with his planet, so he kind of indoctrinated a one rule fits all. And like, but like that show. But what I loved about him was I think first you see the dichotomy between him and Infinity War and like the version you see in Endgame. They're essentially fundamentally different, because the one in Infinity War is almost like Zen.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a Zen warrior who's just like, but he's also insane, because I remember that scene with him and Gamora in his throne room. He was, she's like, you don't know that. He's like, I'm the only one who knows that, and the only one who's like willing to do anything about it. And you're just like, yeah, that's not scientific. That's straight up like you believe something, like you're saying, Darcy. Like it is just the thing that you can't change your mind from, despite other evidence to the contrary. And then you see him in Endgame where he sees the evidence that it doesn't work, and he's like, you guys are right, I just need to wipe out everybody. It's just like the next step of the same doctrine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, Darcy, you had like 3 things you were going to say.
I'm going to narrow it down to 1 because I forgot the other 2. But it's all good. No. So the one is, I wanted, when Tax was talking about Guardians of the Galaxy and being bought in the second the music came in, it reminded me of the difference between that and Suicide Squad. Yeah, I'm tying it back to that old trash.
I really would like to hear how this goes.
Well, Suicide Squad, a lot for trailer reasons, but potentially because of Guardians of the Galaxy as part of the reason. Also, the fact that they've hired Josh Gunn, right? Is that they use music. And the thing is, there's a fundamental difference between the two, how they use music, right? One, in Guardians of the Galaxy, they actually use the music as part of the set. So the music that was heard was actually in the world. So he was listening to it in his headphones. They were playing it in the ship for the most part. Like when the music was part of the scene, it was in the world. Like, yes, there's obviously like scoring that happens that's not in the world, right? But when it was present and it was basically a character, then it was part of the world. And that's my half of my point. I'm going to circle back my other half on it. With Suicide Squad, when it was so present, it was treated like a music video. It was external of the characters in a lot of the scenarios, but it was loud enough and present enough in terms of how the audio mixing was done to make it feel like it was supposed to be a character. So it actually can be in conflict with the scene. Now, you can use music like a music video to enhance editing, right? If you have a cool, badass action sequence where, let's say there's a bunch of kicks and stuff like that, and you edit the way the actual fighting happens to the beat of the music, you could do something like that. Not every movie can do that, but it's a design aesthetic that you can choose. But it's a very choosy and very specific design aesthetic to go for. The other thing I loved about Guardians of the Galaxy, and this is the thought that crossed my head first when Tactix was talking, is that the music in Guardians of the Galaxy was part of the story. It was actually depicting so much of his character, and it tied back to his mother. And in both films, he had 2 different like mixtapes specifically given to him from her. And he'd like moved on from one chapter of his life to the next chapter of his life. And it was signified by choosing the next tape. Right? Like those, like it's so well crafted into the story and making it a character in the movie in such a beautiful way. Whereas you take a movie like Suicide Squad, just because the complete opposite use case, where they just tried to like make it a big thing, and it just flopped in like every regard.
Yeah. So. I want to add one more point to my love for the first Avengers movie in my list. Another reason why I love that movie so much was Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Because like before we had Edward Norton, before that we had Eric Bana. Like Hulk has been done in so many different ways. Like we all the way back to the TV show with Joe Ferrigno.
Lou Ferrigno.
Sorry, Lou Ferrigno.
I was like, that didn't sound right. I just didn't know.
It didn't sound right either. And I was just like, I don't think I said about it anyway. But I gotta say, like, while I would say what it was done with him later on also wasn't my favorite, but in Avengers, the psychology of Bruce Banner that Mark Ruffalo played, the different types of Hulks we got like the one that is like he's in control of his body, and then you get the one that is a result of like the explosion. So whenever he gets like angry, innately without him like being able to control it. That it's like a wild Hulk. But at the end, you get like a different Hulk, which is like he's still in control, but he's also like he's kind of like given a little bit of control to the Hulk, but he has it. But it was done seriously. It was done with some humor. Like Mark Ruffalo played it with like when he goes to the baby crib and he's like, I don't always get what I want. That's sad, but it's also kind of like a joke in itself. There's subtleties in the depiction of this Hulk and this Bruce Banner relationship that I was like, that was expertly done. And that's why I was kind of sad with Thor Ragnarok a little bit, because and also with Infinity War, they kind of made him a joke. They kind of brought it back a little bit in Endgame, like especially that scene with him and Thor when he goes to like get Thor to come with him, and like Thor has his breakdown and he like grabs him and like Hulk just kind of like gently like as Bruce Banner, but firmly as with the Hulk, he has that voice change. He's like, please take your hands off me.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about what happened in the Hulk last couple films, but I have to say I disagree with it on the basis that like Ragnarok was used to expand his character and to actually like introduce more of the Hulk aspect of Hulk, right? Coming out from the psyche, and using the time lapse of him not being there to also be a part as why they could jump his character far forward quickly, and in terms of like having it off screen quickly, and then you completely break his character down in Infinity War to start building it back up slowly in Endgame, and I feel like it's all a plan so that they can do something big with the Hulk in coming films that you couldn't do if you didn't take him apart and deconstruct him and try to build him back up first, to expand on multiple different things that he can do with that character. And the struggle has been we haven't been able to make a Hulk film in quite a long time because we don't want to fall into tropes, and his character didn't have enough dimensions to build a film around. And even if they don't build a full film just on him alone, but he's a big starring part of it, like Ragnarok, but even bigger than that, you need to develop his character enough. And I feel like they've now done that through the Endgame, that they can throw Hulk into a Spider-Man film. They could throw Hulk into like a bunch of other films, and he would have a role to play that isn't like Smash, right? So I applaud what they did with the character, is what I'm saying. So
I gotta say, I love what they did with Thor from Infinity War to Endgame. Like his just alone in those two films, his story arc from like that was just magnificent.
Thank goodness for oh my gosh, now I can't think something in Lou Ferrigno because you know what you said. What's the director?
Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi. Thank goodness for Taika Waititi coming in and allowing Hemsworth to take a real spin on that character, and the two of them really go out there, like show the comedian, because like I can't see Thor any other way pre Ragnarok, and you see some of the old clips of him, and I'm like, no, that's not the Thor I want to see. I want to see everything that we have right now. I do not want to see early Thor because he doesn't have enough dimension to him. And I love the humor that Hemsworth is able to bring to the character, because he's such a big guy that he's not supposed to be what he actually is in real life, which is like a actually well-rounded, like funny person with humility. And he's not supposed to be that in that role. And that's what makes the role so much more enjoyable, is that he brings things that I think Tactix is like, the things that he loves in a character, right? Like that humility. And it's like, that's what makes him amazing right now. So
what do you think, Z, about like the Hulk or Thor?
I agree with everything that you guys said in terms of, especially with Thor. Like I was not impressed with the first two Thor films. Like I did not like them at all.
I admit I'm the minority who prefer those over Ragnarok.
What?
Yeah,
no.
Well, so because you said you like the Shakespearean aspect of the first one, right? So I can get it from that standpoint. I just didn't like him as a character, especially him being so pompous and arrogant, and I just can't relate to the characters like that.
I hear you.
But totally. To echo what Darcy said about how his character progressed, especially in Ragnarok, and like they added more of a, they took certain liberties with him and added more of a comedic element, which made him a more likable character. The arrogance was still there to a certain extent, but it was almost like, it was very lighthearted as opposed to like, oh, I'm the shit. And this, it's kind of like now he's cocky, but then it's like, now he's kind of unsure of himself because it's like now there's like all these other big characters like Captain America, and obviously with the hammer thing from Ultron when he moves it a little bit. Yeah. And then Hulk obviously being the strongest Avenger as we established in Ragnarok. So it's like it's like he's the butt of his own joke, which I liked because it kind of took him down a peg.
Yeah. But he's still like, he comes in Infinity War and it's like he comes out with that new hammer and it's like,
then he backs it up and it's like, whoop, 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 whoop. Yeah, like that's crazy. So I like that balance.
Yeah, like
kind of like what you were saying, like both of you actually are saying, like, I love that when he fought Thanos in Endgame with Iron Man and Captain America, yeah, he was fat, but he was the most powerful he had ever been at that point. He had two hammers. He had all the lightning completely coming like within himself, and he had overcome his like emotional hang-up. And like, yeah, he was still in the fat suit, which I'm glad they kept. But it's kind of like what you're saying about the character himself. Like he himself was more enriched.
You know what I love about the fat suit is like rewatching like Endgame a few times. Is like I didn't notice it in the moment because there's so much stuff to pay attention to in that movie that you're not gonna see all the details because it was just you're like, oh, right. But there was like when he raises up and gets the lightning, the suit goes on. I didn't realize it, like he braided his hair. And his like fat suit was like a little bit of like what those like slimming like things,
waist trainers.
Like waist trainer, like almost waist trainer him a little bit. And I was like, damn. Like he's like, summon the waist trainer. Let's go. Braid my hair. It's like that's a lot of specific things to get from just the camera and the outfit. It's like, can you imagine like a Thor like Sailor Moon scene where it's just spinning, hair is like weaving itself. Oh man, I'm just going off on a tangent.
All right, well, we're at 5:30, so I guess any closing statements before we end?
I would just like to ask the audience, write in your comments, what are your top 5?
And tell us why.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that was the Geeky Bros podcast. Till next time, I'm your boy Tactix.
It's your boy Darcy.
I'm Big Geek Umar. Live long and prosper, y'all. Like and subscribe.